Paul, I'll give you the final word, a quick final word, because I think Don provides this audience with such a great invitation, this industry and innovation, to be a positive part of the solution, to make sure that every kid has access to amazing sports experiences, even as they build an innovative business. And as one of the top sports entrepreneurs, if you believe all the magazine titles, any final words you'd have for this audience that's looking to try to make the right kind of impact?
Yeah, well, as a preamble, it's been difficult throughout this conversation to follow Don because he's such a great speaker and is covering so much ground so quickly. But I'll say that the three of us can agree on the certain benefits and kind of growth that we've seen from the professionalization of youth sports when done well. We think about our sport probably more like hockey and golf than soccer. I grew up playing rec sports, and my first sport I played was soccer, and then the second was basketball. And lacrosse, like hockey and golf, are also expensive, which is another large barrier because of the equipment and cost of equipment. If you look at another equipment-based sport like football, they got it right early in rec by lending equipment to those who went out for the team. Certainly some things to discuss from a health and safety standpoint there. Yeah. But for us, we look at the revitalization of rec sports, and in particular rec lacrosse, as something that Don mentions, a deep investment that we're looking at, that our sport is looking at. There are psychodynamics now, given the professionalization of youth sports, where it's actually more difficult to revitalize rec than it used to be because of the peer pressure and kind of the exclusive nature of how club programs have developed. And again, no disrespect, a lot of them have helped sport grow and commercialize that trickles up to the pro game. But that's my comment there. And it's important for us to acknowledge wider youth participation in all sports. Don mentioned specialization, the impact that the NCAA has, and what they should be doing is more legislation around early recruiting, and eliminating that altogether so that students and kids feel less pressure around acquiring skill by the time they're 13 so they can get a scholarship offer, especially for non-headcount sports. What I'll say related to the macro environment, and I'll wrap, is this is a really challenging time. We started this experiencing a global pandemic unlike anything any of us have been a part of in our lives. And now we're amidst a major movement in trying to reconcile one of the country's original sins in slavery and the systemic racism that has continued to live in our daily lives. And all people are now being called to stand up and no longer lack psychological standing. And in our case, what we've been advocating on for League is to be anti-racist and speak about racism in light, not just as it formally has been around acute hate speech and crime and murder related to race, but also racism to the degree that it's in the air that we breathe because of the systemic and institutional racial policies, because of just the differentiation of what it's like growing up in this country, Black versus white. Now, off of that and related to sport, and speaking of ways that we can reconcile, you think about South Africa, and one of the favorite quotes I have related to sport come from Nelson Mandela: "Sport has the power to change the world." Nelson Mandela also led the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa, and I think it's a unique one for me to reflect on given the context of this conversation, because all of what we are doing in our jobs, not only from our skilled labor we had talked about as players and coaches and front offices and our employees and getting them back to work, but also the impact that MLS and PLL are putting and resources and investment into the youth game and ways that we're going to contribute. And I know, Jeremy, you had mentioned that not all the youth programs get access to Dr. Fauci, but because of our investment in the youth side of things, and I assume MLS is doing the same, but we're developing medical protocol for our youth partners to share with based on our learning. So the net of it is that it's a difficult time, but sports is very well positioned to galvanize communities because of that core relationship that players have with each other from all different genders and creeds and race that they have with their coaches that Don alluded to, and certainly the power that the pro leagues have to impact change in a meaningful way.